this interview on November 5th, 2005 at 1122 Chalet, New Carlisle. We are interviewing Richard Davis, and the people attending this are me, Jesse O'Connor, and Richard Davis. And we are working with Stivers School for the Arts.
What do you want to say?
War, branch of service.
You mean when I was drafted?
Yeah, wait a minute. This interview is taking place November 5th, 2005 at 1122 Chalet, New Carlisle. We are interviewing Richard Davis. The people involved in this interview are me, Jesse O'Connor, and the interviewee, Richard Davis. And we're doing this with Stivers School for the Arts. What war or branch of service were you in?
I was in the Army. I served in Vietnam, and I was a Spec 4, and our base camp in Vietnam was Pleiku.
Okay, and when is your birthday?
6/2/47.
Okay. First question. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Okay. And where were you living at the time?
I was living in New Vienna, Ohio.
Do you recall the first days in service?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us about them?
I remember leaving Dayton Airport, which was really sad, leaving the family, and knowing basically that most of us was going to Vietnam. I remember arriving in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. They put us on cattle cars, what they called cattle cars. They were like trailers, ran us around real hot, and you had to stand in long lines to take shots. A lot of guys passed out, and when you went to boot camp, you got up at 4 o'clock every morning, had to run 2 miles before you were allowed to have breakfast.
Tell me a little bit more about the boot camp training experiences. Any stories on that?
Well, boot camp was, like I said, we got up every morning, we had to run. When we did calisthenics, the sergeant would sit up there and drink water and said, we'll do these till he gets tired. And then they had one they called Drag Ass Mountain, which they run you down this big mountain of sand and you had to run it back up without stopping, which was really hard. They took us out to a 100-yard field, and we ran through it in the daytime under the barbed wire and stuff. Then at night you had to crawl through under the barbed wire for 100 yards, and they had landmines going off all over the place, and they shot at us with 60 machine guns. So you had to keep your head down or you get shot. They used live ammo.
Do you remember your instructors?
Sergeant Black and Sergeant Cook. Sergeant Black was our drill sergeant, and Sergeant Cook was under him.
Was there any thing you did to get through this experience?
When you was basically in base camp, you could call home a lot, so you definitely got to call home to the family. At certain times you get away, and just you had a lot of friends, and we all sat and talked, and you just really had to. It was a whole life experience going straight out of high school into the Army like that, and all of us basically, a lot of friends. We just all stayed together. They just kept you so busy you didn't have time to think, because even when you went to eat, you had to eat real fast because they only give you 20 minutes to eat. And then usually a sergeant was waiting on your lieutenant, and you had to learn how to salute, so you went to all the saluting drills, how to use a rifle and fire a rifle. I'd never fired a rifle in my life till I went to Vietnam, and I became an expert with the rifle.
Where exactly in Vietnam did you serve?
Pleiku was our base camp. I went from there to Doc To, which is like 100 miles, and 100 miles in Vietnam was like a 12-hour trip, because I rode on an 8-inch gun which went about 40 miles an hour, weighed 28 tons, and we went through Kontum on the way. So I served there about 5 months, and we came back to Kontum and served for about 3 months, and then we went to a fire base 14 outside of Kontum.
Do you remember arriving and what it was like in Vietnam?
Yeah, we arrived at Cam Ranh Bay. They got us off the airplanes. They took us all into this room and told us that we were same as hired killers in the States. We were there to kill, and if we were given orders to kill, that's what we were supposed to do.
What assignments did you have when you were in Vietnam? What did you work on? And
well, I was in an 8-inch gun. Our shells weighed 200 pounds. You had to keep the gun in order. You had to keep all the ammo, the powder dry. We had to keep the ammo. We had to build ammo pits. You had to build all your bunkers every time the gun moved. If the gun moved every 3 months and took it somewhere, then you had to take sandbags and build all your hooches. And the same stuff they used for the runways for the planes was used for overhead. And then you had so many sandbags on top of that, but you had to fill sandbags, and you may build it a month and move a month later, move the gun somewhere, and you have to build it all over again. So you spent a lot of time filling sandbags and digging and fighting the enemy.
Did you see any combat?
When I was at first gun, I was only in Docto a week, and we got shelled about 3 times the first week I was there. And you could see the blast coming. Where we were at, it went down to a river, and like a mountain on the other side. You could see the blast coming from the mountainside on the other side. They were shooting at the airport. We was about a half mile from the airport, so the shells went over us to go to the airport. We seen a lot of stuff get hit at the airport with the shells going over us. And at different times, depending where we was at, we had our gun hit by a landmine at that was at Firebase 14 as we come out of the jungle. And 2 or 3 of the guys got hurt real bad. And I seen a Jeep get blowed in half and killed 6 men. And another gun got out of direct hit and killed all the men on it. So, yeah, we saw our share of action. We was in 69 mortar attacks.
Were there any casualties in your unit?
Oh yeah, we had some that were done by the enemy and some by stupidity. We had guys get shot by their own men going on guard duty, not giving the call. We went out on a logging tour because we had to build our hooches, and we had a guy get shot through the arm. One guy got shot through the leg. Because we were in artillery, so we stayed in a compound. We didn't go out like the infantry. The infantry went right out where the battle was, but we fired support for the infantry. But you'd hear a lot of on the radios at night. And we sat and listened one night to an outfit get completely wiped out, and all we could do was sit and listen on the radio. But there was times that I remember firing M79 rounds one night. The tanks were firing. There was movement in the jungle, so we fired all night. Or they may call on our gun to just fire all night. And there was another time when we was at Firebase 14, we fired the 2 8-inches and saved an outfit from getting overrun and got credit for 148 kills. Our 2 guns did.
What were the most memorable experiences you had in Vietnam?
Well, some were good, some were bad. The one bad one was when they laid our gun out and we killed 11 of our own men when we shot back at Docto and hit our own guard bunker. We had fun times. I remember we went and stole stuff from the Air Force when they were moving, and floors, and made a floor and played basketball. That was the officers and enlisted men. We played football. And then there was just the times when we was getting hit. We was at Docto getting hit, and you could hear the shrapnel hitting all around us. And then when the battle was over, we walked around and stood in 5-foot holes within 100 feet of where we were. The shells hitting before they made us get on the gun to fire back.
Did you get any medals or ribbons?
I have 2 presidential citations from the president for the 8-inch what we did. And then we got a medal from the president of South Vietnam the day we saved 140. We kept a fire base from getting overrun, and that's when we got the credit for 148 kills, our 2 guns.
How did you stay in touch with your family and friends?
The only thing you could do is write letters. Wrote lots of letters, and I guess they wouldn't let you put a lot of stuff in the letters because half the time my family would write back to me and tell where the letters had been cut or stuff had been crossed out. But they didn't want, I guess, stuff we weren't allowed to write home about. So, but mostly with letters. Got a lot of letters, and not just from home, but I had people from Japan, and I had a pen pal in Japan I used to write to. She would write. I had other from New York, and I wrote and told them where we saw a tiger. That was one of the more experiences. So we did see a tiger, elephants, gorillas. We had a tiger come right to our compound, drink out of the river. It was about 100 yards away.
What was the food like?
Most of the time, the food was really good. They really took care of us in Nam. Some of the times we felt like we was eating water buffalo and stuff, but most of the time food was really good. Even I remember having what's coming up, the 5th, Thanksgiving and Christmas. They put a spread out for us. All the pies, 5 or 6 turkeys. I mean, you wouldn't believe the food we had. Most of the time, the food, they fed us really good. Except now when we went out on a mission one time, we was going for about a month, and we slept. Our hooch was about 3 foot high, and we didn't take a shower for over a month, and we ate sea rations. They weren't bad, but they weren't the greatest either.
Did you guys have plenty of supplies and things to use most of the time?
Oh yeah, we never run out of ammo. We always had ammo trucks coming, bringing the 200-pound brojos we shot and the powder, and it would come in a case. Then we used them casings to build your beds because they give us cots. Because we usually had to sleep 3 or 4 feet above the ground in most places you were at. Just like we was in Khartoum, that was, trying to remember some of the stuff. We had to have our bunks up 4 or 5 feet high because the rats were real bad and snakes were real bad. Because when we went to Khartoum, we took a base outside of Khartoum, and it was really bad with snakes, so we had a truck come in with a bunch of snake bite venom because of the snakes being so bad.
Did anyone in your unit or you ever get attacked by one of these?
We seen them. I don't know if you really call them attacked. We got up one morning and there was like 8 of us sleeping beside each other, and one of them had the tail and the head was at the other end. By the time we got it outside and everybody was shooting at it, we finally got it killed. And we had guys get attacked by rats. We had guys, 5 or 6 guys get bit by rats, even our master sergeant, and had to go take all them shots for rabies.
Was there a lot of pressure and stress when you were in Vietnam?
Oh yeah, at times. You'd have officers come over. Like one night we had a fire mission at Dak To, and we were getting hit, and these big brass come in and made us take soap and water and wash the projectiles before we were allowed to fire them. I remember our chief of smoke coming down saying, well, it didn't make us fire any better, but he said we sure were pretty looking.
Was there anything special you did for good luck?
Read the Bible. I had a Bible over there. In fact, it went underwater 2 or 3 times because they tried to make it stay underwater. You'd wake up in the morning and all of a sudden your hand would fall out because we slept like 4 feet high. And when your hand hit the water and then you stepped out and you was knee deep in water, everything would be floating. Then we had to try to move out, and then we had to rebuild everything that we were doing above ground. That was the monsoons, and it would rain every day at 5 o'clock, and some days it would rain for 10 or 12 days straight, never stop.
Besides the football you mentioned earlier, how did you guys entertain yourselves?
We played cards, played poker. Like I said, we even built basketball hoops. We did a lot of talking and walked around. And sometimes we'd narrate the war. We'd hear fighting going on, wasn't around us, and we'd all sit and talk about it. It was different being over there. We even had one song that played all the time. Like, it was a song called "We Got to Get Out of This Place." And then they announced it over the radio one night that they were not allowed to play it anymore because it brought morale down. We didn't think it did because we'd be dancing on the tanks and stuff because we listened to radio, a lot of radio, and tried to get papers and stuff from back home and read about what was going on back in the States because that really helped.
Did you ever go on leave or anything?
I went to Hawaii for a week's leave, which was a lot of fun, and I met people there that lived in my hometown of New Vienna, which is real small. And he was a lieutenant colonel in the Marines, so I got to go to all the bases and run around with him. And then I went to Japan and spent a week in Japan, which was really fun. Flew right over Mount Fuji in Japan, and Japan was a lot of fun.
Was there anywhere else that you traveled besides Japan, Vietnam, and Hawaii?
Nope. No, you got 2 leaves by being in Vietnam, and one of them you picked where you wanted to go. So I picked, there was a lot of places. We could have went to Australia, but I wanted to go to Hawaii, and then I went to Japan.
Can you think of any funny or unusual events that happened any time in the service?
Oh, well, we called it funny. Maybe the guy that was with us wasn't. When we was playing football one time, we got hit. It was one of the times we got hit pretty hard, and you could hear the shrapnel. And the guy throws the football, and the guy drops it because the shell lands. We could hear a shell landing somewhere in the compound, so everybody takes off running. We made him go back and get the football because we figured we have men we can replace. But football was hard to replace, so we made him go back and get the football. Then the night we ate dog meat, this lieutenant took us out to a place to eat, and we found out we ate dog meat. We had this one sergeant who was one of our guys. We knowed him all the time, and he made sergeant. He throwed up for a week. We thought he was going to die, man. We didn't know anybody could be that sick. Funny, found out he ate dog meat. And at night, we used to have rats come into our compound when we stayed underground. The wood went up, about 2 feet from the top. And you put a lot of stuff packed behind that. And at night, when you go to sleep, you'd hear the rats come in and run back and forth. And they were as big as a small dog back there. They were big. and we'd hear them. So one night we took a plate and got 12 pork chops that were like 8 and stuff. We took them, laid them on a paper plate at this pole, and then we would take the bullets off the end, and it was soap. We'd pack it with soap, take so much powder out, and you would fire like 2 or 3, 4 feet. But it made a hole in the box, and we figured this would kill the rats without anybody shooting anybody. Well, we all went and fell asleep and got up next morning, all the pork chops, the plate, and everything was going up.
So, what did you think about your fellow soldiers or people that you were around?
Well, you had to like them because over there, at times, Vietnam was bad. If you didn't cross anybody or do anybody harm or try to get them in trouble or hurt, because they're just liable to shoot you. Because like I said, stress, when you talk about stress, stress was high. And when you got a bunch of guys running around carrying a loaded rifle all the time, so everybody just, basically we all stayed pretty happy with the bunch we were in, and everybody protected everybody. Because you had like 12 men on each gun, and to survive over there, us 12 really had to stay tight as a unit, and with the unit we was with, because if you ever got hit some night, and you only had 3 or 4 men maybe in a compound, and if they hit us, they would hit us with 10,000. Well, you had to stay tight, and if everybody didn't get along, then we knew we was all going to die. So that was one way everybody kind of stayed pretty tight with each other.
Did you keep like a diary or something?
I took a lot of pictures, took slides. I've got a whole bunch of slides of Vietnam with different things that happened. And like, I remember more things. I remember one time we was going through Kontum, and one of our tanks got hit outside of Kontum when we was heading out to Dak To, and the guy jumps out of the jungle, and he takes the bazooka, and it hits the tank, but it goes off in the air. And that I didn't realize tanks could be on a row and turn the turret and fire. 3 tanks stopped and fired, then they went over into the jungle, and we figured they was running over the guy, and then they would take the tanks and spin them when they was on the Vietnam bodies and stuff.
What kind of things did you have to carry with you on yourself when you guys traveled anywhere?
You had a flight jacket. It was like a bulletproof vest. It was real heavy, real heavy. You had to carry your loaded rifle. I had an M79 I carried, and your helmet. But basically, when we traveled, we just got on the 8-inch, weighed 28 tons, which it would travel, or we drive in a 548 vehicle, which is like a pickup truck with tracks instead of wheels. But basically, everything was carried in the vehicle. So on you, you just basically carried your rifle, your flight vest, and your helmet was your 3 things you carried. Well, you had a belt that had, in case you got shot, we had some kind of thing. If they told us, the only thing I can remember, if we ever got gassed, you had some kind of thing you could punch in your knee, and some kind of needle come out that kept if we got gassed, and you had stuff if we got wounded. A belt with medical supplies and all that kind of stuff on it. But basically, your rifle, your helmet, and your flight vests, and a lot of ammo was the most important thing you could carry.
Was the ammo heavier?
Nope, it was well. When we had the M14, it was a little heavier because the cartridges were bigger. And I was the last one in my unit to switch over to the M16 because at first the M16s weren't reliable. But when we switched to M16s and they really became reliable, I only had one for like a month and a half. I could carry about 12 extra loads of ammo, and there was 21 in each clip. So I wasn't about to do no hand-to-hand combat.
Did you ever have to use your M16?
Yes, I did on guard duty one night. It was raining, and I kept calling in and telling them that I had movement, and they kept saying it could be friendlies. Well, we had about 200 yards of barbed wire that someone had to crawl through, and I kept telling them I kept hearing something, and they kept calling back and said we have to check it out. Finally, I got mad and used a few choice words and opened up, and they come and took me off of guard duty because they said I disobeyed orders, because I wasn't supposed to fire. But the next morning they apologized because they found a piece of the guy's skull and where the enemy had drugged him off. And then another night we were getting hit. That was after that. I called my sergeant down, and he said he would take permission from it. And I remember firing a 60 machine gun the biggest part of the night. So we could see movement down toward the river, and it's about 200 yards away.
Do you recall the day that your service ended?
Oh yes. I remember coming back from Vietnam. I remember getting on the airplane. We had to stay up like 18 hours because they told us when we got into Cameron Bay, if we missed the plane, and this plane showed up, was called Braniff, had paint chipping off of it, and we're all like, We didn't care. We was getting on that plane. We didn't care what it looked like. I remember flying into Japan, getting in a real bad storm. There was like a typhoon, and the plane felt like the rear end of the plane was coming to the front, back and forth, and it was a champagne flight, and the champagne would come out of the glass, come back down in the glass. And I can remember we're arriving in Washington, state of Washington, because the pilot said, "Gentlemen, you are on USA soil." And I remember calling my dad, and my dad started crying because I was home.
And how long did you serve?
2 years, 1 year in Vietnam.
And where was the other year?
The 1 year was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's when or Fort Jackson when we went in. That took about 10 weeks of training. Then we went from there to, straight from there, didn't get to go home or anything, to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where we took another 10 weeks. And I was assigned to artillery. When you go to when you first go to training, you're either artillery or infantry, which they call grunts. I got in the artillery, and I went to Fort Jackson, or Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That was for artillery training. That's when I went. Then I went home for 30 days, went to Vietnam. Then when I came back, my last, I got back in the last 6 months were at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
When you got back, what'd you do? I mean, did you just...
When I first came back, I remember coming home, and it was really hard because, like on a Friday I was in Vietnam, and like on a following Monday I was walking the streets of my hometown, and I remember getting excited about killing people over there. And then it was kind of brought you down because you kept thinking, I got excited about killing people, and that ain't right. Boy, it was really tough trying to come back to the real world after leaving Vietnam, and they didn't give us no training or anything. But I remember going around after being home for about a week and doing nothing, applying for jobs, and I think it was about a month later I got a job with the post office and started working for the United States Post Office.
Did you have any friends that you still talk to that you made while in the Army?
No, I've tried to keep contact with some of the guys, but it was real hard. We had guys, because most of them, the one boy that I did, I'll have to say that, he, for the first 6 months, he was killed in a car wreck. All we talked about was going in the Army, and we got back, and we stayed together. We was in Vietnam together, and we was at Fort Bragg together, and all we talked about was buying this 56 Chevy, saving up his money. So he didn't take no R&Rs, he didn't go to Hawaii, he didn't go to, and he comes home and gets killed in a car wreck right after he came home from Vietnam. He lived in Chillicothe, Ohio.
Did you go to school at all when you got back? Or?
Yes, when I got with the post office, I worked with the post office for about, what was it, a year, and well, it was longer than that, it was about 7 years. And a buddy of mine was going down to Miami Jacobs Junior College, so I went with him and found out I could use my military. So I got a check for like $360 a month for going to school, which helped pay for my schooling. And the school was just, it was just short of being 3 years. About a month or two of being short of 3 years going to Miami Junior College. And it was accounting classes.
Have you joined any veterans organizations?
Oh yeah, I joined the American Legion. It's kind of exciting going to them and talking to the guys, because they'll talk about World War I, World War II, and then there is more guys getting there that talk about Vietnam now. And I used to have nightmares when I first came home from Vietnam, and they would last really bad. I had really bad nightmares, and I remember going to a movie and grabbing my daughter and running to the movie, over the seats and over people when we saw a certain movie. Forrest Gump, when the napalm went off, and I remember dragging her across, and so.
Was there anything else you did as a career after the post office and the college?
I retired from the post office, and now I'm a security guy. I got into security, and I've been a security guard for the last 4 years.
Okay. Did your military experience influence what you think about the government or war? And
yeah, I did. You can ask my wife. I have a real bitter toward our government, because ever since we got back, all the Vietnam vets, we were really shafted. When we first come home, we got no ticker tape parade. Back when we came home from Vietnam, most people spit on us and called us baby killers, because there was times in Vietnam if you see a 10-year-old kid coming at you with a grenade, well, we either had to shoot him. I never actually shot one, but I've seen him get shot by the guys that was with us, because somebody had to shoot him, or we'd all gonna get blowed up. They would run up to your Jeep and throw a grenade in it. So at times that was stressful too. I forgot about that. That was a real stressful time when those kind of things happened.
Have you attended any reunions or?
No, I haven't. I would have liked to. I lost some of my paperwork when I got home from Vietnam. Can't find a lot of the guys, and I've tried to go back to things. And I found places in a flea market where a guy was running stuff, and he looked up names, and I've sent information off, and I've never heard back from him. Like I said, I had guys in New York, Nevada, Oklahoma, California, Pennsylvania, Tennessee. That was a lot of, and we had a few guys from Ohio. We served with over there in Vietnam.
How did going to Vietnam affect your life?
Well, you grow up real fast. You know, you're right out of high school. You're 19 years old. So most of us in Vietnam were between the age of 19 and 21. We even had a few over there who were 18. So you don't get much of a growing up life because you go right from high school to learn how to kill and do things. So my life changed a lot. Come home, having a family and everything. It seemed to help. Made you grow up real fast.
Is there anything that you had planned on before you got drafted that you followed up on, or that you didn't follow up on after you came back?
No, not really, because when I was there, I was going to school, and I thought I'd like to have got into school and played basketball and done things, but I got to do that. I got to go to Miami Jacobs Junior College, and I played basketball on the junior college circuit, which we even played at UD. We played a lot of reserves, and we got to travel the state of Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana and stuff, and played basketball. Played about 36 basketball games each year for 2 years, and that was a lot of fun. So that was like a dream that I never thought I'd get to. And I played college ball. But when I was in high school, I was usually 6'2", and we had a guy 6'3". It was phenomenal. But to play college ball and have a bunch of guys 6'7", 6'8", and 6'10" was really fun.
Is there anything that you'd like to add to the interview? As we're nearing the end of it, is there any stories, any experiences that you'd like to add to it?
Well, it's just part about Vietnam. Some about Vietnam, I would have just liked for our guys to got a better shake when we come home. And I think now I can see by the wars that's going on now, they're treated a little better. When we got home, we were just thrown into the limelight, and it was real hard to go from a war to come back and live in the States and live a normal life for a while, because all you could think about was you felt naked. I mean, you're carrying a rifle one day, and the next day you're walking the streets of your hometown. You're not allowed to carry a rifle and kill anybody. So that was a real hard adjustment to make, and it's just like coming back and trying to get back into real life, into the real world was a big change in life.
Is there anything you'd like to tell anybody watching this? Any words of wisdom or?
Well, yeah, I think that the way they're doing the wars now is a lot better, because us guys in Vietnam were really treated bad. We got no respect when we first come back. We had nobody respected us. Like I said, we got spit on a lot. It was in a lot of fights because everybody made fun of us, called us names, and that was for years and years and years. When I first come back in Vietnam, that went on all the time. And they told us that was one of the things I forgot. When I left Vietnam, they did take us into a room because where we killed 11 men with our own gun, and we had other things where guys shot each other accidentally and certain things. Well, they took us into this little room and told us we weren't allowed to talk anything about Vietnam. We could be arrested and go to jail. And we found out that was all false. And when we started talking a little bit about Vietnam, and it helped to talk about it, that the nightmares started going away. I had nightmares for about 30 years, and the nightmares slowly have gone away, and I haven't had nightmares in a while now. So other than that, it helps to come back and talk about it and get in groups with the VA or something. That's what everybody needs to do when you come back, because the military back then didn't help us. So you need to get in a group. It helped to even get in the American Legion and talk to other guys about their experiences. And I was with my wife one night here about a month ago, and we stopped at a store, and she met another veteran, and I told her, honey, look, it ain't just me, because he really went off on the government and how he said we've been treated and everything. So I think she understood a little better how I felt at times that I get mad about things. And I even went to church. Going to church helped a lot, because I even went to church and asked them for help, and they'd give me verses to read in the Bible and about being forgiving and everything, and that's helped a lot.
Well, I'd like to thank you for letting us do this interview with you, and thank you very much.
No, I appreciate it. It was fun. Alright, this is some of the pictures and items I brought back. This was a clip of an M14, and it had a lot of kick. Don't have a clip of an M16, but that's a clip of an M14. This is the thing that we had to use, and probably still has a needle in it. That you slammed you. That's one of our safety kits that you kept with you while you was over there. Here's some pictures of Vietnam. This is the picture of when we got our it's got the medal. They wouldn't give each of us a medal, but they give the medal to our gun crew of when we saved 148 guys. This is the 2 gun crews of the 8 inches. This was a place of worship in Vietnam, and this is when we was bunkered underground, and we did have a record player. We used to play records. We did get to play records. This picture is when we were underground. This is where we slept. This was an underground picture. This picture is when you had candles. You had to take the candles and hold them up under the light, make sure there wasn't nothing in the candles, because when they waxed the candles and melted them down, they might have dynamite. So as the candle burnt down, the wick burnt down, it would burn right into the dynamite, and that's how a lot of guys died, by the candle. And I forgot about this one. Christmas time, my brother sent me this Christmas tree. And I had that Christmas tree for years after I came back from Vietnam until it finally fell apart, and I put it up every year in memory of Robert Beam, which is my son's named after him, Dale Beam, and he's the one that died in a car crash. And we had our own little personal Christmas tree between our bunks when we was in Vietnam. And this is the 8-inch. This is what I did at night. I'd go out and sit on this 8-inch, and over there you didn't have no cities, no bright lights. So when the moon was full, you could read by the moonlight. And I used to read the Bible every night and talk to the Lord. That's how I knew I was coming home from Vietnam. This is when we got hit at Polly Clang. That's one of the holes. That's men balls standing in a hole where one of their shells hit. This is where it hit the airstrip. And some of these were within 100 yards of our unit. This is the airstrip. Here I am holding a 200-pound projectile. This was the shell we fired. It made a hole 6 by 5 feet. There was times we would fire the shell 18 for effect, and we would put the gun in one angle and just fire 18 straight times. I guess we were to save the tunnel rats from going down in the tunnels. We would fire 18 shells and we figured we was built on the lake, because if one shell made a hole 5 feet by 6, what would 18 straight be in it? And it was the most accurate piece the Army had. You could put a dime out there and we could put that shell and hit a dime. And just here's what the gun looked like when it fired in Vietnam. This picture right here with the clouds, and I don't know if there's another one there of it, but this is just around the area. But when a gun fired, dust would raise up about 3 or 4 feet high, and if you were supposed to be eating and not fire the gun, dirt landed on your food. So if you didn't eat fast, you ate a lot of dirt, and they didn't refeed us. Most of the time, when you ate, you just had dirt sprinkled on your food. You ate fast. Here's on this side. This is the Jeep that was hit, and the 6 men died. In fact, and when the one gun I don't have a picture of, when it got hit, all they found was one of the guy's rib cage. He tried to save the gun when we was getting hit one night. He tried to move the gun. He got hit, and they sent his rib cage home to his family. That's what they sent home. That's all that was left of him. Here is Beam. That was, my son is named after him. Here's when we went down to the river one night. This was Mountain Yard kids. They would come down and we'd give them all kind of candy and cookies and whatever we have surplus of. Because they always done favors for us, so we give them a lot of candy. Here is the guard bunker that our gun killed 11 men. So that was very hard to come home and talk about and deal with. Here's the book the military gave us, and it was very helpful by reading this book and going what this book said. We went to Vietnam. They give us this book. It speaks Vietnamese, and learned how to speak a lot of Vietnamese. We met Mountain Yard kids, and I forgot in the other interview, but I pulled guard duty one night with a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 16-year-old. The 10-year-old, they were all asleep. This lieutenant come around and says, "You will get the next person up. Who's supposed to be on duty?" And I said, "He's 10 years old." He said, "Get him up." Well, as soon as the lieutenant left, I got back up. I took my It was real cold at night over there. So I remember taking my army jacket off, and this little 10-year-old laid in my arms, fell asleep. I held him, he slept, and I pulled guard duty all night. I wasn't putting my life in the hands of a 10-year-old kid. And this is the money we used. It was like play money. We had dollars. We didn't have, I don't think we had anything bigger than a 5. There was 5 cents, 10, and 5 cents, and then we had quarters, and we had dollars and $5. That was the biggest money, but it was like play money that you would have in Monopoly or anything else. That was the money. That was the money we used in Vietnam. No coins. We had no coins. This is the Bible. This is the Bible I had when I was over there. It went underwater about 3 times. I tried to sleep underwater. I read the whole Bible, and it has really fallen apart on me. But I read that whole Bible the whole year, the year I was in Nam. Read that whole Bible. Let me see if there's another one here. Here's some other pictures of Vietnam with just the guys I was with. I think it says there's Simon and Stuart, Jim Morrow. That's Main. There here is Main Street Kontum. That picture there is going down to. And when you go down, they had a lot of fruit, but they told us to not handle the fruit and do a lot of with the fruit because you didn't know how good it was. The enemy could be poisonous at any time, so that was hard over there. And to buy a pop, they'd come down and sell us a pop. It was this was back in the '60s. It was $1 cold and 50 cents warm. But then you had to watch drinking the pop because they sprinkled broken glass in the bottles when you bought bottles of glass. So when you drank it, it would tear your insides up. They'd sprinkle so you had to try to shake the bottle and look at the bottom and see if there's anything floating around in a pop when you bought it from the Vietnamese. And, here's another picture of a lot of stuff that went on, and I think I showed that one, didn't I? Yep, I showed that one. And of all the pictures I got, that's just about everything there. It shows the medal we won. So.
Thank you.
All right. How's that?